My husband and my best friend were sneaking around behind my back, so I slipped into a maid's uniform, pushed a trolley into their hotel suite, and pretended to be a room attendant. As I polished the vase, I saw them in the bed together. I didn't yell or run instead. I casually took out my phone, snapped every detail, and left them frozen in guilt, wondering which housekeeper would expose their betrayal next. My life, as I knew it, was quietly happy, simple, maybe, but full of everything that mattered to me. I had built a family, one that felt both whole and beautifully complicated in its everyday routine. At the heart of it was my husband, James, a charismatic, lively man of 39, who was the center of my world. Our road to this life hadn't been smooth. James came into our marriage with baggage, a son from a previous relationship and a history of emotional scars that contributed to his divorce. His ex-wife battled personal struggles, leaving James to protect their son, Lucas, from the fallout. When James and I got married 7 years ago, I welcomed them both with open arms. I embraced Lucas like he was my own. Now 9, Lucas had grown into a quiet, thoughtful boy, and the rare times he laughed felt like little treasures. He lived with us full-time, a daily reminder of James's life before me, a life I'd chosen to be part of. I loved Lucas like my own child, and in many ways, he was. Our connection had grown stronger with time, even through the early adjustments and the blurred boundaries of a blended family. 3 years into our marriage, we had a son together, Ethan. With his father's eyes and a smile that could light up a room, Ethan was a living, breathing symbol of our love. At 5, he was the spark of our home, always trying to rope Lucas into his playful world, something Lucas did with a calm maturity that amazed me. Our life in a quiet suburban neighborhood was filled with the usual chaos: school runs, weekend soccer games, family dinners full of noise and love. James, whose job often put him in the local spotlight, was a recognizable face around town. But his visibility never intruded on our home. It gave it a quiet sense of pride. We laughed more than we argued, a balance I held close to my heart. My best friend Claire had been in my life since college. She was married to a rich businessman who provided her with luxury, but not the emotional or physical connection she longed for. Claire often confided in me about her disappointments, her voice tinged with envy when she compared her strained marriage to the passion she saw in mine. Despite her discontent, Claire was a constant in our lives. She visited often, talked to me daily, and was like an aunt to my boys, something she cherished even though she never wanted kids of her own. Her presence felt safe, a familiar link to the past we both clung to as life shifted around us. Our families became intertwined, not out of duty, but by choice. She and her husband were regulars at our family barbecues and birthday parties, just another piece of our larger, happy picture. James was always an affectionate and present husband. He left sweet notes on the fridge, surprised me with flowers, always reminding me how much he cared. But slowly, I began to notice small shifts. At first, they felt too minor to mention, but now I see how loud they were. Some evenings, James came home looking distant, not just tired, but emotionally elsewhere. When I'd ask what was wrong, he'd give me a tight smile and say work was just stressful. His eyes, once so open and easy to meet, began to drift away from mine, like he couldn't quite hold my gaze anymore. And then, there were the texts. I remember one night, lying in bed next to him as he typed on his phone. I peeked over, curious, and he immediately tilted the screen away, saying it was a work email he had to answer. His face was too calm, too practiced, and it left a strange feeling in my gut. But I ignored it, scolding myself for being paranoid. Claire's changes were more subtle, yet somehow heavier in hindsight. She was always lively and blunt, never afraid to share every detail of her life. But over time, that spark dulled. She became quieter, her laughter felt forced, and her visits grew shorter. When she did stop by, something was off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Her actions felt hesitant, like she was always on the edge of saying something she couldn't quite voice. I remember one lunch in particular, she kept glancing at her phone, distracted. I joked about her having a secret boyfriend, and she laughed it off, but something flickered across her face. Guilt, maybe? It made me pause. But then she changed the subject, chatting about a new restaurant she wanted us to try, and the moment slipped away. Our conversations, once raw and real, had become surface level. She still asked about my life and the kids, but it felt like she was just checking boxes. I talked about James and the boys, never realizing how my words might sting. Looking back, I can almost see the exact moments her discomfort peaked, especially when I spoke about James with love and pride. One evening, the 4 of us, James, Claire, her husband, and I had dinner at our house. I noticed Claire's laugh didn't sound real. And more than once, she and James shared glances they quickly tried to cover. It was like they were both performing in a play, hitting their marks, but slipping just enough for someone paying close attention to notice. After they left that night, something in the air felt heavy. James was unusually silent, pulling away from me in a way I couldn't quite name. When I asked if he was okay, he brushed me off again, just tired. But he wouldn't meet my eyes, and there was a tension in his jaw I hadn't seen before. Those signs, the tiny cracks in our everyday life, they were always there. I just hadn't seen them for what they really were. I never truly understood heartbreak until I realized not only had my husband cheated on me, but my best friend helped him do it. That kind of betrayal cuts deeper than anything I've ever known. It shattered everything I thought I could trust, shaking the very foundation of my life. I couldn't stop wondering, how did I not see the signs? They were all there, right in front of me, a story of betrayal being painted while I looked the other way. The day I found out the truth started just like any other. It was a sunny Tuesday. I was cleaning up the house while Ethan played quietly in the living room. My phone buzzed. I expected a reminder or maybe a message from a family member. But it was neither. It was a text from an unknown number. No name. Just the name of a hotel and a room number. That's it. My stomach dropped. Something about it felt wrong, too specific to ignore. Fear, confusion, and this creeping sense of dread wrapped around me. Why would someone send me that? Was it a mistake? Or was something darker going on? Every logical part of me told me to ignore it. But the doubt had already taken root. I had to know. I asked my neighbor to watch Ethan, offering some vague excuse about a last-minute errand. My hands trembled as I drove. The hotel's address burned into my brain. Every mile closer made my chest tighten. By the time I pulled into the parking lot, my breaths were shallow and shaky. I walked down the hallway like I was in a dream. My legs felt like jelly. I stopped outside the room and hesitated. I didn't want to know, but I had to. I knocked softly. "Come in." "Why are you taking so long?" "Help me clean up this wine," came a voice from inside. A voice I knew. CLA's voice. Annoyed. Casual. My heart was racing. I opened the door slowly, dressed like hotel staff. What I saw didn't feel real. My husband James was on the balcony, phone to his ear, not even noticing me. CLA was sprawled on the bed, a spilled glass of wine soaking into the white sheets. I bent down, pretending to clean, my hands shaking so hard I could barely hold the cloth. She kept talking, thinking I was just housekeeping. "You know, he's the only one who really satisfies me," she said, her voice thick with satisfaction. "I've always been jealous of her perfect little life." I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Her words echoed in my head, each one cutting deeper. She mocked her husband too, saying he was weak, that he didn't measure up. The cruelty in her voice was shocking. There was no guilt, no hesitation. I stood up, forgetting the disguise completely. I just stared. James finally turned and saw her, his whole face lit up in a way he hadn't looked at me in years. That was all I could take. I turned and stumbled out of the room, sick to my stomach. Outside, the fresh air hit me, but it didn't help. The pain, the rage, the humiliation, I couldn't hold it in. I threw up in the bushes. A physical reaction to the emotional storm crashing through me. The drive home was a blur. My mind kept replaying the scene like a horror movie. How long had this been going on? How could they do this to me, to our family? When I got home, Ethan was laughing and playing. The sound was innocent, sweet, so painfully out of place compared to the chaos in my heart. I smiled for him, but inside I was breaking. That night, once he was in bed, I sat in the dark, waiting for James to come home. Every tick of the clock felt endless. When he finally walked in, his face fell as soon as he saw me. My eyes were red. My face was pale. I didn't have to say anything. "Is everything okay?" he asked, pretending to care, his voice suddenly feeling so fake. How could I even begin? How could I explain what his betrayal had done to me? Later, while he slept, I got up quietly and went back to the living room. The house was still. The only light came from the street lamps outside. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number from earlier. My heart raced. It rang once, twice, again, and then someone picked up. "Hello." It was a voice I recognized right away, even though I never expected to hear it like this. It was Mark, CLA's husband. "Why did you send me that message?" I asked. My voice trembled with confusion and anger. There was a pause. He didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was low and bitter. "I thought it was time you knew," he said simply. And just like that, the weight of it all came crashing down. "When did you find out?" I asked, needing to understand. "I've had suspicions for a while," he admitted. "But I confirmed it a few days ago. I saw them together. Just like you did today." The words stung. It wasn't just the betrayal, it was how obvious it must have been to those who actually looked. Why tell me this way? Why not confront them? I asked, my voice cracking. Mark sighed, a long, tired sound. CLA's never been honest. I know she married me for my money, but I hoped maybe something real would grow. Eventually, I just wanted to hurt her the way she hurt me. Tear down the life she pretends to have. Show everyone the truth. His words sent a chill through me. He wasn't just exposing them, he was using me to get revenge. But did you ever think about what this would do to me? I whispered. To my family? I did, he said. And for the first time, his voice softened. And I'm sorry. You didn't deserve this. Neither did your kid. I didn't know how else to make her feel it. We both fell silent. Him, broken and bitter. Me, reeling from the wreckage. Two strangers, bound together by betrayal. But still so alone. Is that supposed to make me feel better? I asked, barely able to get the words out. I finally spoke, more to fill the silence than expecting a reply. Honestly, I didn't even want one. No, I guess not, Mark answered, his voice carrying both defeat and sorrow. But maybe, in time, we'll both find some peace, knowing the truth. Maybe we can rebuild something from the wreckage. Even if it's not what we had before. The line went dead. I sat there in silence, the echoes of our conversation hanging in the air. The night stretched endlessly around me, heavy with things left unsaid. Mark's intentions, though rooted in his own heartbreak, had dragged me into the role of unwilling avenger in a marriage that wasn't mine, tearing open wounds in my own life that may never fully close. I stayed there for a while, the phone still in my hand, staring into the darkness. The truth was finally out, sharp and bitter, but it didn't bring relief. Just more questions, more pain. And now, the impossible task of figuring out where my marriage and friendships stood in the fallout. As dawn crept in, pale light spilling into the room, I realized the road ahead was uncertain. Forgiveness felt as far away as the fading stars, and trust, once broken, seemed almost impossible to rebuild. But in that moment of early morning clarity, I knew one thing for sure. Whatever decisions waited for me, they'd have to start with facing the day and its consequences head-on. I woke up from a restless sleep, haunted by everything that had happened. The weight of what I'd learned pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe, harder still to think. Still, one thing was clear. I had to talk to James face to face. We had to confront this, whatever it was, whatever was left. I didn't want to fight, I just needed the truth. Some kind of closure. I planned to meet him tonight after the kids were in bed, some quiet moment, just the two of us. With that thought, I picked up my phone to send a message and lock in our talk. But as the screen lit up, my heart skipped. My home screen wasn't quiet, it was exploding with notifications. I opened the social media app and there it was. My breath caught in my throat. A video. Unmistakably James and Claudia. Intimate. Devastating. Raw. Posted by an anonymous account, but there was no denying it. What it showed, who it showed. Our private nightmare was now a public disaster. My hands shook. My skin went cold. I didn't need to guess who had done this. It was Mark. After everything he'd said last night, the grief in his voice, it made sense now. His pain had curdled into vengeance. He didn't just want to reclaim his dignity, he wanted to scorch the earth. My phone started to ring, snapping me out of the trance. Call after call, it buzzed with urgency, journalists, friends, strangers. Everyone had seen it. Everyone wanted a reaction. Oh my God, I whispered, staring at the screen, at the life unraveling in front of me. The conversation I had planned with James no longer mattered. The world had barged in loud, cruel, and uninvited. This was no longer a private heartbreak. It was a full-blown scandal. My mind reeled as I tried to grasp what this meant for our lives, our family. This video changed everything. There was no more space for quiet understanding. No room for reflection. Only damage control. Public, personal, all of it. With shaking hands, I called James. He picked up quickly, already caught in the storm. Have you seen it? I asked, my voice tight with shock and rage. Yeah. I saw it, he said. There was regret in his tone. And something else, maybe fear. I'm so sorry, he began. This isn't how I wanted. Wanted what, James? I cut him off, the flood of emotion breaking loose. For me to find out like this? For everything to fall apart online. There was silence on the line. Heavy. Final. I'm coming home, he finally said. We need to talk. In person. Figure out how to handle this. All of this. When the call ended, I just sat there numb. I knew what was coming next wouldn't be easy. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about survival. Protecting our children. Shielding our family from the wreckage. The hours crawled by until James returned. When he walked through the door, his face said it all. He was shattered too. Not just by what had happened, but by how the world had witnessed it. We sat down, facing each other, the weight of everything between us. This was bigger than us now. It was about our kids, our parents, the ripple effects of a scandal that couldn't be taken back. We talked about the immediate things, how to keep the media at bay, how to speak to the kids, how to take legal action against Mark for this invasion of privacy. We didn't decide the fate of our marriage right then. That would come later. First, we had to steady the ship and protect what was left of it. But I knew there was still one thing left to do. After James and I had started to patch the bleeding edges of this disaster, I knew I had to call Mark. As raw as my anger was, I had to try to stop this from hurting the people who didn't deserve it. I stepped away to a quiet corner, my hands still trembling as I dialed. Each ring echoed in my ears, stretching the silence tighter. When he answered, his voice was cold, distant. "Mark, please," I began, my voice cracking. "You need to take the video down. Please think about my kids. About what this could do to them if they ever saw it." There was a pause, and then I heard him breathe, a long, drawn-in sound that told me he was weighing something. "I posted it for a reason," he said finally, his tone hard and bitter. "I know you're hurting," I replied, forcing calm into my voice, though my insides were shaking. "But they're innocent. Don't let them be collateral damage in this. Please." Mark exhaled again, slower this time. A long sigh that carried years of pain. "You think I want to hurt kids?" he asked, his voice losing some of its edge. "You think I haven't thought about that? I know you're angry, and you have every right to be," I said, trying to reach the part of him that used to be our friend, before all this bitterness took over. "But please, think about what this could do to them. They might lose friends, get bullied, their entire world could change. And once something's on the internet, it's there forever." There was a silence, longer this time. I held my breath, hoping my words had reached him. Hoping he remembered the man he used to be, the one who came to our home, laughed with us, celebrated with us. Not this man, consumed by revenge. Finally, he spoke, his voice softer, uncertain. "I don't want to hurt your kids. I don't." His words carried a weight, as if he was finally seeing how far-reaching the damage could be. "But Claire and James, they did this. Not me," he added. "They're dealing with it," I replied, keeping my voice firm. "But our kids shouldn't have to. Please, Mark, do this for them. Take the video down." We talked a little more. I told him about Ethan's recent school accomplishments, how he was finally starting to enjoy soccer. I spoke about Lucas, how strong and quiet he'd been, handling the challenges of a blended family and the ordinary struggles of growing up. With every word, I tried to pull Mark back from the screen into the real world, our world, the one where two little boys were caught in the crossfire. Mark finally gave in. His voice held a mix of defeat and clarity. "Okay," he said. "I'll take it down. Not for James or Claire, but for the kids." I thanked him, relief washing over me, though it was mixed with the knowledge that some damage had already been done. We ended the call politely, but the relationship was changed forever. Still, I respected his choice to protect my children in the end. After I hung up, the relief was real, but so was the weight of what lay ahead. The video might be gone, but the rumors had already started. Conversations had been sparked. The digital footprint, while smaller now, would never fully disappear. Now came the hard part, facing our friends, our families, and most of all, our children. How do you explain adult mistakes to children too young to understand the complexity of betrayal? That was the puzzle I was still trying to solve. James and I knew we'd have to navigate the coming days carefully. Our goal was to protect our sons from as much of the fallout as possible, while still answering their questions with the honesty they deserved, in ways they could understand. In the wake of the scandal that shattered what once looked like a perfect life, the days that followed were some of the hardest I've ever lived through. The foundation of my world, my marriage, had been irreversibly shaken by betrayal, and I was left stumbling through unfamiliar emotional territory. The morning after I convinced Mark to take the video down, James approached me. His usual confidence was gone. He held divorce papers in his hands, placing them gently on the kitchen table where we'd once shared meals and laughs. "I think it's best if we do this," he said quietly, his voice strained. "I don't deserve your forgiveness, or your love." His words cut through the air like a knife. I stared at the papers, the cold finality sinking in. Part of me had held on to hope for healing, for our family, for our boys. But looking at him, defeated and remorseful, I knew the only path forward was apart. I signed the papers with a heavy heart. Every signature felt like a silent goodbye to the life we had built. I didn't fight him on much. All I asked for was primary custody, so our sons could have as much stability as possible. James agreed, guilt carved deep into his expression. Once the paperwork was done, I moved with Ethan into a small nearby apartment. It wasn't fancy, but it felt like a fresh start, a safe space where we could begin again, away from the reminders of betrayal. Claire's life, meanwhile, unraveled more publicly and dramatically. After her affair with James and everything that followed, Mark made sure she didn't benefit from their divorce. With proof of her cheating, he kept her from touching his wealth. Last I heard, she walked away empty-handed, a fitting consequence for her actions. But Claire's downfall didn't stop there. Recently, it was reported that she'd been arrested for corporate corruption. Her unethical behavior extended far beyond her personal life. Part of me felt vindicated, seeing her face consequences. But another part was simply sad, for the wasted potential of someone I once trusted, even loved, as a friend. As for me, I've been focusing on rebuilding. The divorce, while heartbreaking, gave me a chance to refocus on what truly matters, raising Ethan and staying close to Lucas, even though he lives with James. It hasn't been easy. Ethan especially has struggled with the changes. At just 5 years old, he doesn't fully understand why our family isn't whole anymore. He asks when Daddy's coming home. And when he realizes he's not, he goes quiet, his sorrow almost too much to bear. Despite the hurt James caused me, I've always encouraged a strong relationship between him and Ethan. I believe that whatever happened between James and me shouldn't interfere with the bond between a father and son. We agreed to attend family therapy to help Ethan cope. It's been helpful, but there's still a long road ahead. In this new chapter, I've had to step into both parenting roles, doing my best to be enough for Ethan. I've also had to start healing myself, working through the betrayal and finding the strength to forgive, not for James, but for me. And for Ethan. I've found peace in small things, returning to work, reconnecting with friends and family who stood by me. Their support has been a lifeline through all of this. The scars from the past few months are real, but so is my hope. Life is unpredictable and often painful, but it also gives us chances to grow, to rebuild. For Ethan. For Lucas. For myself. One day at a time, we move forward. And with love, resilience, and courage, I believe we can find joy again. The months that followed became a test of endurance. Every day brought a mix of healing and heartache. Some mornings I'd wake up and feel strong, ready to face the day, take on parenting, rebuild what had been broken. Other days, the weight of everything would press down on me before I even got out of bed. Ethan's questions became less frequent, but more pointed. He no longer asked when Daddy was coming home. He knew that wasn't happening. Instead, he started asking why Daddy didn't live with us anymore. Why we couldn't all be together. I answered as honestly as I could, telling him that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, but that both his parents loved him more than anything. Lucas, older and more aware, didn't ask as many questions, but I could see the toll it took on him. He'd grown quieter, more introspective. He didn't speak much about the divorce, but when he did, it was with a maturity that both impressed and broke me. I made sure to remind him that his feelings mattered, that it was okay to be angry, confused, or sad. We talked late at night sometimes, just the two of us, about how life doesn't always follow the plan we imagine, but that it can still turn out okay. James, to his credit, never backed away from his role as a father. He was consistent with visits, respectful of boundaries, and always focused on the kids. There were times when we exchanged more than just brief hellos, moments where we shared updates, small stories, even memories. Those moments were hard. They reminded me of what we had, what we lost, and what we were trying to salvage for our children's sake. Family therapy became a lifeline. It gave Ethan and Lucas a space to speak freely. It gave me a space to grieve, really grieve, the loss of my marriage, my expectations, and the future I thought I was building. Through the sessions, I learned to let go of guilt. I realized I hadn't failed as a wife or a mother. I had simply been human, doing my best in the midst of heartbreak. Eventually, I started to see a shift in our little apartment. It began to feel like home, not a stopgap or a hideaway, but a place filled with warmth, routines, and laughter. Ethan painted pictures that we hung on the walls. Lucas helped cook dinner on weekends. We made new traditions: Friday movie nights, pancake Saturdays, walks in the park on Sundays. They weren't grand gestures, but they were ours. One afternoon, months after the divorce was finalized, I ran into Mark again. It was unexpected. We were both at a local community fundraiser for the school. He looked different, less angry, more at peace. We exchanged polite greetings, and I thanked him again for taking the video down. He nodded, and there was a moment of mutual understanding between us. The damage had been real, but so had the effort to repair it. He told me he was moving on too, focusing on his kids, trying to rebuild his own life. There was no animosity between us, just the quiet recognition that we had all been through something deeply painful and survived. As the seasons changed, so did I. I stopped measuring my life by what I'd lost and started seeing what I'd gained. Strength, clarity, a renewed sense of purpose. I began volunteering at the school more, joined a local support group for single parents, and even started writing again, something I hadn't done in years. It helped me process the messiness of it all, to find meaning in the pain. And one day, unexpectedly, I laughed. Not just a small chuckle, but a full, belly-deep laugh. It caught me off guard. I was watching Ethan dance around the living room in his superhero costume, cape flying behind him, shouting about saving the world. In that moment, I realized we were okay. Not perfect, not untouched by pain, but okay, we were healing. James and I eventually found a rhythm in co-parenting. We weren't friends, exactly, but we were allies in the most important mission of all, raising our sons. Over time, trust in small amounts returned, not enough to rebuild what we had, but enough to build something new. Something rooted in respect, shared responsibility, and mutual love for our boys. Claire faded from our lives entirely. The legal consequences of her actions kept her busy, and I no longer found myself checking the news for updates. She had chosen a path, and it had caught up to her. As for me, I had no room left in my life for bitterness. I don't know what the future holds. None of us do. But I've stopped being afraid of it. I've learned that even when everything falls apart, you can still rebuild stronger, wiser, more compassionate. The past will always be a part of me. The betrayal, the pain, the long, sleepless nights filled with doubt. But they no longer define me. They're just part of the story, chapters in a much longer book that is still being written. And this chapter? It's one of strength, of starting over, of building something better, not just for me, but for Ethan and Lucas. Because in the end, love isn't just what holds a family together, it's what helps it survive the worst and come out the other side still standing. Still loving, still hoping, still moving forward.